かるよわかるよ。あ、なん
It almost goes without saying that virtual YouTubers, or VTubers, are a massive phenomenon. In the space of just a couple of years, they've gone from essentially a niche technology experiment to some of the highest earners in the online world, breaking countless records and even topping music charts along the way. They are also no longer a uniquely Japanese phenomenon. Several agencies now have a sizable pool of English-speaking talent, and Galbraith from Hololive English is the most subscribed VTuber in the world. Recent scandals don't seem to have bucked the trend of growth either, with viewer counts only continuing to increase. On a personal note, I happened to experience the growth of VTubers firsthand. When I first went to study abroad in Japan in 2017, what many would consider to be the first virtual YouTuber, Kizuna Ai, had already made her debut 1 year prior. Now her channel was growing rapidly, but she was still very much far from the mainstream. Fast forward 1 year later though, and I was stumbling across Kizuna Ai merchandise and books on how to become VTubers in places like Tsutaya and Anime, two of Japan's biggest hobby merchandise vendors. Things only increased in scope from then on, to the point where I'm sure everybody who's watching this video right now can name at least one VTuber and the sort of stuff they get up to. Even so, virtual YouTubers aren't entirely novel or new. In fact, much of what makes them engaging actually comes from another piece of interactive entertainment that completely upended Japanese popular culture when it first emerged in the 1960s: idols. On the one hand, the comparison between virtual YouTubers and idols is pretty obvious. Both are essentially entertainers marketed for their image by corporate entities, be it Nijisanji or Nogizaka 46. They also both enjoy close parasocial relationships with their fans, despite the fact that many fans will never have any personal interaction with their idols apart from very closely controlled circumstances. Some VTuber agencies even proudly declare themselves to be in the idol business, such as Hololive, which has described itself as an idol jimusho or idol agency on several occasions. When virtual YouTubers are then regularly putting out original music and appearing in live concerts, I think it becomes difficult to argue that they aren't at least trying to emulate the activities of more traditional idol culture. Even so, there are several obvious differences, the first of which being that VTubers primarily interact with their fans not through original music or live concerts, but live streaming. Crucially, this is also how they make most of their money. Countless artists have spoken out against the low payouts offered by such streaming services as Spotify and Apple Music over the years, so the amount of revenue generated by virtual YouTubers from original music is likely very low. Certainly, exclusive merchandise and live concerts do offer another method of monetization, but it is pretty much a fact that most modern virtual YouTubers carry out a regular regime of Let's Plays and other live stream content in the hopes of getting user donations through YouTube's Super Chat system. I'll talk more about monetization later on, but suffice it to say that the sheer amount that some fans are willing to give their favourite personalities was enough to convince many companies to prioritise streaming over other forms of content. One other key difference between virtual YouTubers and more traditional idols then, is that virtual YouTubers necessarily conduct their activities through some sort of virtual avatar. I mean, this is what puts the virtual in virtual YouTubers, even if the technology for doing so has changed quite a lot over the years. First there was Live 2D, then there was stuff like Reality, and now several agencies have special studios set up to allow their talents to make use of motion capture technology and perform live streams in full 3D. When you see a traditional idol perform in concert or on TV though, they don't perform through the same kind of moving image. What you see is ostensibly what you get, whereas there is always another face behind the face you see on a virtual YouTuber's live stream. This dual reality might seem a little disconcerting to an outsider, but I'd argue that it is precisely what makes virtual YouTubers so engaging, especially when we relate it to idol theory. In Chapter 9 of Idols and Celebrity in Japanese Media Culture, Patrick W. Galbraith defines the idol industry as the production and consumption of images. Each aspect of the idol is broken down and transformed into information, which passionate fans then collect and exchange among one another. As a result, the image of the idol gathers and focuses desire and becomes a commodity in and of itself. What's more, Galbraith talks about how these images aren't just consumed on their own, but are used in conjunction with one another to construct an alternative reality. Although fans may never actually meet their favourite idol, they still feel a sense of intimacy and connection with them, as the sheer number of images across multiple mediums point to their existence. This is not based on any personal experience, however, but a very complex and interlinked matrix of representations, leading to an inescapable intertextuality as images refer infinitely back to one another. Galbraith argues that this inescapable intertextuality is precisely what makes idols so engaging, as the unobtainable image continues to seduce in commodity form. There is never any final gratification or climax, as fans constantly chase after an endless number of images, never gaining a stable point of view of the whole person. Nevertheless, there are times where these images do come into conflict with reality, and that is where scandals are born. Contrary to popular belief, most fans do not view their favourite idols as potential life partners or even sexual objects. Even when viewing otherwise risque image videos, 3 of the most common sentiments expressed to Galbraith by fans during the study were that they A. healed them, B. energized them, or C. allowed them to see the idol's growth and therefore foster a sense of connection. A certain kind of purity is therefore preferred. So when things like illicit relationships or flings eventually come to light, they often result in backlash. Some idols actually like to play what's known as the fiction game, in which they draw attention to themselves as idols and performers. There is also a growing movement against so-called purity culture, but most agencies still prefer to keep their idols both believable and pure. In many ways, this is because of the inescapable intertextuality that the idol industry relies on. Any sense of reality would inevitably get in the way of images that refer endlessly back to one another. But what does this have to do with virtual YouTubers? So far, we've covered some of the basic concepts underpinning idol theory in academia, but we've yet to explore how this relates to the subject in question. There are also several key differences between more traditional idols and virtual YouTubers, as previously explained, thus begging the question, to what extent is idol theory applicable here? In an article from 2008, Daniel Black actually describes the virtual idol as a logical progression from the more established model of idol creation. This is because they could be purposefully designed from the ground up with consumer interests in mind, while also never losing their youthful looks as they aged. Freedom from human biology therefore represented a huge advantage in the production of images as commodities, even if this did come at the cost of human personality. The only problem is that, when Black is referring to virtual idols in this article, he's mainly talking about Hatsune Miku. While it is true that many industry figures have cited her as a major inspiration, I don't think she's anything like the virtual YouTubers of today. For one, she has no personality of her own. She was originally conceived as a music production tool, and any traits that are now attributed to her came about as a result of fan-generated content using the Vocaloid software. The inescapable intertextuality that makes idols so engaging also isn't really applicable here, because there is actually a logical endpoint for Miku fans. You know, you just need to download the software, get the 3D models, and then bam, you have obtained the unobtainable image. Even if the virtual idol is being produced by a machine, rather than being a machine in this case, as Black puts it, I don't think she's really anything more than a moving doll. And it's actually arguably because of this that figures such as Hatsune Miku never reached true celebrity status, again to quote Black. That being said, Black does correctly ruminate on the possibilities inherent in the transformation of the idol into the virtual in the future. Not only do virtual bodies offer a huge advantage in the production of commodities, he also says that an idol that exists only as digital data holds the promise of a more intimate relationship than is possible with a living idol. The Idolmaster games were actually an early example of this, but I'd argue that virtual YouTubers finally bring this to the next level by virtue of their engagement model. Having laid the groundwork in theory, let's finally look at an actual concrete example. From June to September 2021, I was a member of the HoloLive personality Horseshow Maddie's YouTube channel, meaning that I paid $4.99 a month to be part of her exclusive fan club. I like her quite a lot, mainly because she seems a lot more mature than some of the other talents in her generation. She also currently has over 1.8 million subscribers, so I'm definitely not alone in this sentiment. It goes without saying that Maddie's entire image is pure artifice, paying tribute to the kind of freedom offered when you depart entirely from human biology. Her eyes are impossibly large and her hips impossibly small. You'd never find anyone who actually looks like her in the real world. Of course, this is probably because she's meant to look more like an anime character than a real person, but I think that even virtual YouTubers who use a more realistic avatar tend to only approximate human biology when it's convenient for them. The attraction to aesthetics and form over content has been noted among otaku consumers by several writers, most notably Hiroki Azuma in his book Otaku, Japan's Database Animals. But I don't think that a virtual YouTuber is necessarily the same thing as Hatsune Miku in this sense. After all, behind the avatar, there is actually a real person with real thoughts, feelings, and emotions. That's why I think her existence as a commodity actually mirrors that of a traditional idol much more so than a living doll. She cannot be obtained with the click of a button, meaning that fans chase after her images in a state of inescapable intertextuality, never gaining a stable view of the whole. In fact, virtual YouTubers take this inescapable intertextuality to a whole new level, as the medium of live streaming offers a sense of intimacy like never before. What Black describes as the keyhole of the media is suddenly blown up to much larger proportions as the image of a virtual YouTuber appears on your phone or your computer screen, moving and talking. She reacts to funny moments in games and talks about what's on her mind in a very candid way, and often for hours on end. There's also nobody around you as you watch her live stream like there would be at a live concert, for example, giving the impression that she's talking to you and you alone. The effect that this intimacy produces is pretty obvious when you look at the sheer amount that some passionate fans are willing to give their favourite personalities. Despite the fact that most virtual YouTubers produce hours and hours of content for free, some fans are still willing to give very large donations and join exclusive fan clubs. If idols are ultimately just commercial products marketed for profit, then it's no surprise that most companies have prioritised streaming over other forms of content. It's simply the most effective and engaging form of monetization. That being said, there is an obvious contradiction here. However engaging the virtual YouTuber on your screen may be, this is ultimately being driven by another person in the real world, hidden from view. How do VTubers overcome this? How do fans not get dragged out of the experience? As it turns out, it has a lot to do with scandals, and how the fiction of an idol is produced. To return to Galbraith, he talks in chapter 9 of Idols and Celebrity in Japanese Media Culture about the concept of a fiction game. Now he's talking here mainly about a certain subsection of idols that draw attention to themselves as idols and performers, but I think that all idols are actually inevitably drawn into this game by virtue of their existence as commodities. Even if an idol's public persona is very close to how they act in private, there's only so much that an image or a set of images can actually represent of the whole. I mean, we all have things about ourselves that we hide from other people, don't we? One amusing argument for why virtual YouTubers are idols is that they seem to be getting involved in exactly the same kind of controversies. hidden relationships, political scandals, and even illicitly obtained objects are all things that have led to public apologies and even graduations for both virtual YouTubers and idols over the years, mainly because we're all human at the end of the day. What sets virtual YouTubers apart from such figures as Hatsune Miku and made them so engaging is also, ironically, what gets them into so much trouble, in exactly the same fashion as traditional idols do. Nevertheless, Black actually points out in chapter 10 of Idols and Celebrity in Japanese Media Culture that moments when control is lost over the public persona are exactly when celebrities, or idols in our case, are most intriguing to the public. There's actually something reassuring about the fact that famous people are just humans too, while the belief that there is actually someone behind the curtain is at least part of what drives idol fans to participate in the endless consumption of images. Scandals can actually therefore serve to reinforce this, provided that they don't disrupt the fiction of the idol too much. Look up the name of any virtual YouTuber online, and you will inevitably find countless videos, articles, and forum threads discussing what their identity is in real life. In some cases, this is even an open secret, tacitly endorsed by the personality themselves. But what's surprising is that fans don't seem to be put off by this. In fact, they revel in the dual reality that the virtual YouTuber inhabits, safe in the knowledge that there is an unobtainable object at the centre of the web of representations. To conclude, virtual YouTubers are idols because they exist as images. Despite the lack of personal interaction, fans still feel close to them as all of the images point back to one another, creating an inescapable intertextuality. It's in this sense that they are very different from such figures as Hatsune Miku, which really are nothing more than moving dolls, while also achieving the more intimate relationship promised by the step into the virtual through the medium of live streaming. Towards the turn of the millennium, several commentators identified a new form of idol very different from the stars of the past. Influenced by hip-hop music and street dance, they were raw and often sexual in their movements, focused more on empowerment and self-expression than the artificiality of the past. Hiroshi Aoyagi called them post-idols, a product of an era where idols can no longer attract the public by simply being cute. Even before this, Morning Musume and AKB48 revolutionized the industry by bringing fans closer to the stars. As the popularity of idols waned throughout the 1980s and 1990s, a sense of intimacy was instilled through the movement and exchange of images. A lot of the things we've been talking about so far, such as photo books and image videos, were used constantly during this period. What we see here in this very brief sketch of idol history is that layers are constantly being stripped back, bringing the fiction ever closer to reality, all the while maintaining the idol's core function as an image commodity. I think that virtual YouTubers are very similar to post-idols in the sense that they disrupt the traditional image of an idol, but still rely on the same form of intertextual engagement. The only real difference between the two is that one performs behind a real manufactured face, and the other performs behind a virtual manufactured face. Everything else is just surface level, hence why I will jokingly refer to virtual YouTubers as post-idols from now on. All jokes aside, where does the idol industry go from here? Well, I think that if we manage to somehow recreate the complex workings of the human brain and develop true artificial intelligence, then this could be the final step in severing idol creation completely from human biology. The advantages of doing so have already been outlined in the video, but for now, virtual YouTubers are the next best thing. They are products perfected, manufactured in image, yet real in connection. Hello everyone, it's Endroll Jacob here, reporting to you from a different time and probably a slightly different camera angle, so sorry for anybody who's annoyed by little things like that. This video took a long time to put together, much more so than I initially thought actually, just due to the sheer amount of research that I needed to do, so I'd appreciate if you could leave a like, maybe a comment to help the channel grow. I tried my best to sum up some quite complex ideas in this video in a relatively short space of time, so if there are any problems I do apologise, but I do plan on returning to this topic sometime in the near future. I'd like to extend a personal thanks to Alicia Haddock for all their help on this video. They helped point me towards some really useful sources to do with more traditional idol culture, as well as providing me with some of the Momoido Clover Z footage that you find throughout the video. At the minute, I'm maintaining a schedule of a new video every 2 weeks, as you've probably already noticed, so definitely get subscribed if you haven't already. Also be sure to check out my Twitter for more regular updates, as well as my TikTok, where I'm doing some more short form content, mainly about manga, but there's also some other stuff on there, so there's bound to be something that you'll enjoy. Thanks again, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.